Gon' talk that shit now, shit now.
Peace. Human families of the planet Earth. How is everyone tonight, this evening, this day, this great and most glorious time that it is to be alive and present and in sound mind, body, and spirit at the close of a new age and the beginning of a new? So we definitely want to give thanks and praise to the Creator, because without the fully divine Creator, Mother, Father, Mother, God, whatever you want to refer to it as, that really means the true is true. It's always good for us to acknowledge the presence of the occipital spiritual aspect of our Terran experience as physical beings passing through this pseudo-reality. So I definitely want to give, again, thanks and prayers to all those ancestors and all those people we lost in the last year, in the years before. We definitely want to always give praise to the honored dead. Also, to those who unfortunately may have been taken advantage of or turned away or turned off from the true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that was put out here for us to get and retain and reclaim back, based upon all the hazards put amongst us and in our path by all of the fastidious and tedious things that go along with ascension. We definitely want to hope and pray that you get redeemed and your faith be restored, you know what I mean? And anybody, again, including myself, that in the process of making the hard choices of maintaining what you needed to do to preserve the longevity of your line, sometimes having to take L's when you didn't need to, being separated from your loved ones, may you all, or we all, be reunited on this eve before the birthday, which is tomorrow, January 8th, of the great prophet, Noble Jew Ali. We definitely want to give thanks and praise for him incarnating into this physical reality and allowing us to realize that in order to uplift all humanity, we first have to realize who and what we are as Asiatic. And to know and understand what that represents and means for us, based upon us being the only people on the entire planet that can truly, truly nationalize themselves back to something more ancient and more directly responsible for what is going on now, and the antecedents or precept of what people refer to as what the framers had in mind. So, on the eve of December 20, what was it? Was it New Year's? No, yeah, it was New Year's. On New Year's Eve, this dude signed in the NDAA Act into an active law, which coincidentally is what the whole Lincoln movie was about, for those people that didn't know it. See, they put them out. They put 3 movies out that basically let you know how things was going to work in terms of what they were using your boy in that office to really do and facilitate. And to first get into that, we have to get into this, which is some of these movies that came out. One movie, the movie that spawned, well, interestingly enough, I wrote in my book, for those people that didn't know, The Dark Scope 418, over 3 years ago, that 2 of the characters in the book appear in this movie called Lincoln. That I did, like I said, I wrote this book over the course of the last 5 to 8 years. So, you know what I'm saying? Goes to show you how, art imitates life. But in any event, this movie, in what I wrote in the movie, 2 of the characters, one of them plays Sojourner Truth. In this Lincoln movie that came out, there was no allusion to Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman in England like that, nor would I expect it to be. Also, in my book, I dealt with the whole relationship with him and Randolph and Hitchcock, but that's something else, right? Which I'm glad they didn't, you know what I mean? So what I did notice, though, is that they focused on a relationship with Horace Greeley and himself, Lincoln. And there were a couple of movies that went into that. The first movie that spawned it was The Conspirator. And that movie actually takes place after the death of Lincoln. So if you were to get this movie and watch them in succession, you would watch Django, right? Then you would watch Lincoln Vampire Killer, right? Then you'd watch Lincoln, right, the movie. Then you'd watch The Conspirator, and you would see like how the whole transition, the assassination really revolves around the organic 13th Amendment that they are really scared to death of, and what he was really doing in terms of forcing the rebels out of a rebellious state. Because what it also showed in the Lincoln movie, at least, is that the rebels were trying to get peace. The Confederate white boys were trying to get peace, but they wanted to get it on the terms of still retaining themselves as a foreign nation. And the Confederacy, remember, was antecedent or came out of the overall empire that was developing and coming out of the South, that from ancient times was using slave labor in which they were grafting or importing these wild Germanians or Neanderthals and enslaving them, putting them to work as beasts of burden and stuff like that, as well as other things, and in the process of that creating the slave economy. You know what I mean? All of these slaves being sacrificed to this god they had down there called Kukulkan. Khan. So when we talk about the Toltec Empire that basically pops off around 900 A.D., we're talking about the beginning of a certain degree, a certain influx of foreign Moors now coming to try to bleed into or bleed themselves literally by grafting themselves into the autochthonous quote-unquote Mayan, which is really our Moroccan society that already exists down there that we erroneously call the Maya. So you got to remember the goddess Maya is the goddess of illusion. So whenever they're referring to that, that is an illusionary or mystic name for a people that is now being represented by the antecedents of those people, meaning the people who were grafted between them, the Moors from the Xiang or Xi dynasty, and the influx of what was left of the Neanderthal Caucasians that were being imported into that area due to the original slave trade that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to as the Yaqub breeding experiment, which, like I said, is an ongoing thing. So when we talk about the quote-unquote Caucasian man, whenever you look at images or tapes of Khalid Muhammad, peace be upon him, he always referred to and went into the story of Yaqub because this is integral in our history as Asiatic people or people of the Asiatic race. So we can't, you know what I mean, you can't claim the cup without grabbing the handle, you know what I'm saying? So it's a situation where we have to embrace aspects of our community, of our society or our history that is still put in a mythic context that most people are going to deny, especially black people are going to deny, especially within the presence of Caucasian people, or people who they perceive to be Caucasian. But if you go to Russia and ask somebody who are called or what a Caucasian is, they refer to an Asiatic person. There's a book that's hard to find called The 12 Secrets of the Caucasus by Assad Bey. In which they talk about the Neanderthal population and how they existed there from time immemorial. For those real history buffs who want to show and prove Neanderthalism being adopted into modern times, in Siberia, around the turn of the century, they found one and they named it Zana. And Zana was put in a kibbutz in the frigid, what they call the frigid land, right? The real cold place or whatever, where the people was at. And eventually they domesticated her chained her up or whatever and held her in prison or whatever for like a couple of years, and eventually domesticated her, and then eventually started mating with her. But she had like 8 children, and never spoke. She could never speak, but she was really strong and was, again, like a Bigfoot, Neanderthal. The children, because it's so dark out there, right, the Neanderthal gene, one of the traits in it was that the leftover melanin, right, that was concentrated in the recesses of the melanocyte, of the keranocyte, in the darker places, actually started to generate more. So some of the children came out darker. So this was also used by the eugenicists in terms of the phenotypical color now, because they were creating. You got to understand, this thing that they call the white race was ingeniously grafted and created. You know what I'm saying? Originally by people who were looking to become something other than themselves, who went to great lengths to distance themselves from the original seed. This is Lucifer. See what I'm saying? So with this Lincoln situation, juxtaposed with the Django situation, what you're looking at is the beginning of the Moorification of the United States in terms of its acceptance of its position, based upon the inevitability of the world moving towards a functional, unsustainable position. So everything that is happening in terms of the quest of essentially establishing what they call American Empire was put out in the 90s in the document that we spoke of years ago called the Plans for a New American Century. But when you look at what was really going on, you see that Horace Greeley in the Lincoln movie, you see Horace Greeley was actually with the woman that turned out to be the maid, who was the cousin or the third cousin or something related to Alexander Hamilton. Her name was, I think, Liddy Hamilton Smith. See what I'm saying? But back then she was classified as a quadroon. You see? Because her people came out from Nevis. So you had the Mandaroons and the quadroons and the octoroons and the mulattoes. Then you had the mestizos, you see. These were the different gradations that the so-called Franciscans, specifically the Spanish part of the situation, was looking to in breeding itself out. In essentially continuing the Yaqub thing, that experiment that the darker Moors from the ancient Almoravid and Al-Mahad dynasty and all of that was doing, but now more under the jurisdiction of the Order of Christ as opposed to the Order of Islam. So this becomes the unofficial beginning of the deterioration of us by becoming so arrogant to think that this thing that we were looking to raise up would be raised up whether we saw fit for that or not. See, once something incarnates into life, it's on its own. What's one thing about America which distinguishes itself from everybody else? We act like we all together. We act like everything is equal, but deep down you know if you live in America what is really going on. Especially if you grew up here and you was born here. Especially if you grew up here and was born here in the ghetto and places like that. You really know what's going on. You got peoples and folks and sorors and fraternal brothers and, police benevolent brothers and all these different people around you, family, all that. But in the end, as an American, you on your own. And that shit is real. No matter how big the group is that you're around, no matter how big, in the end, when it comes down to it, when they give you that gun or they tell you to kill that person, it's on you to do that. And if you're being ordered to do so in a manner that is uncivilized, you as a noble or a royal or a citizen of the United States, by your duty, you're supposed to belay that order. But they have bred the integrity out of the human. And so once the integrity is bred out of the species, anything can be hoisted upon it, and it will follow fashion. That is just the way that you break a conquered people, or you break a civilization. You have to remember, the civilization did not fall to people who did not look like you. The people who was killing you that didn't look like you was doing that on behest of people who actually look like you. Hence, Stephen in Django, for those people that saw it. The power behind the throne, the advisor to the king, the Boule, that's the one that was descended from the original ones that put the white boys in play, and always for oath to maintain a society with them, because it'd be better that they be popish than Moorish. They'd rather serve an earthly king that they put in play. Wait till they flip the African Pope on. Wait till they get that pop. That's what they're gearing up for, this African push now. They're going to invade the quote-unquote motherland, but they're not invading the motherland to help the Africans in any way. Don't let anybody ever tell you that, especially an African. They are not. They are going over there to facilitate the removal of as many of the autochthonous Africans, which are really not, because all of them is not in their original ancestral lands. None of them are. Going all the way back to the 1800s. At least if you was poor in the ghetto and your mother was poor and your mother's mother was poor, you was always poor in the same ghetto. You may have moved to this one and that one, but it's not like over there. You would move to a whole different country. That's not even a country now. It's just turning whole countries into refugee camps. So you got to remember, man, this whole thing that we call the United States was founded on a principle of uprightness that was supposed to be enacted and held in play for a period of time by these quote-unquote stewards, by these quote-unquote people that we gave to the world stage to see that there were actually European or Caucasian or renegade Indians, these a.k.a. white males, W-I-G-H-T males, who would benefit and who could represent civilization at a period when we were at our lowest. And while we was down, these niggas just kept kicking us and throwing the dirt on top of us and everything else. And the other black man who's going to act like the slave, who walking with the cane up to the point where we in his face, and he got to stand up straight and let you know that that 2-ball cane is just a joke. This is the trend. 5 minutes. I'm reading. So it becomes this whole bastardized play of who's really an enemy. So the more you participate in trying to figure that out, the longer you stay in a physical me against them situation and don't realize that it's really us against them, or you against everybody else, or all of y'all, you know what I'm saying, against them. Either way, the preservation of the family is now a subjective term, hence shows called the new normal or the modern family. Where you know the traditional symbols, which have already been bastardized from the religion, are now translated over now into your future. And then so long as there's a black woman next to that, you co-sign it, it's okay. So, of course, why not George Lucas married a black chick and everybody like, oh, she's dope, she's this, she's that. But he had no babies with her. He had his baby with the Caucasian woman, and his babies are, like, free. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion. You know, great in science fiction and all of that, but just because he read Red Tails, that's cool, but I was looking at the movie. I was hard-pressed to find one black woman in it. Because now the thing about it moved, the racial historical biopics move more outside of the thing about racial freedom and move more into the realm of interracial love. You see? And they always use the descendants of those bleached out Holy Roman emperors or their slaves to facilitate that and exalt them in false royalty. So if we look at the foundation of somebody like Washington, who said he at the commencement speech at Federal Hall that has him, a bust of him depicted, done in black, where at 9/11 when the whole thing went down, it cracked the foundation of Federal Hall. Now, the thing about Federal Hall is that what people don't understand about Ground Zero is that was the consecration place of the children of Israel who were the slaves or the people who came out of the tribe of Ben Ishmael, which were the original Manasseh and the original tribes or clans of Moors and nations that was already here. So being that they were the sons of St. Tammany and the Sons of Liberty, their organization was basically a Hebrew one, or I would say a Canaanite one under the idea of the Moors, being the original El Phase of the ancient Canaanites and the Hebrews being the original Canaanites who dwelt among the foreign Comesians and Nubians or whatever. So he gave a speech there where he said, we ought to be no less persuaded. This is not the whole speech, but this is a piece of it. We ought not to be less persuaded that the propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained. Now, he said this being an esquire and a Freemason. You understand? So he is now giving the oath in the Great Lodge, which is the open in amongst the people, in his capacity as the first president. This is 1789. This is also in April, so it's done under Aries. So it's an initiation energy, inaugural of the original United States, right? In which he is saying in this that basically if you take God or take God or the original man, God being God and God being the original man and God's original government out of this land, which was seen as heaven by them. Remember, when they came here, it was like heaven. They had never seen trees and things like that the way that they saw it here. So if they disregard us and what we stood for in terms of God being, us being a theocratic autonomy, then they would fall. So on 9/11, when they flipped this satanic ritual, the very foundation of where this thing said this thing cracks, which is a symbolic representation of the fall of the annexation of the what they call Nova Roma, which is where we're in now, which came out of Rome, the state, which came out of Rome, the republic, which came out of the Holy Roman Empire. The latter being the Caucasoid, or what we perceive as the Caucasoid version now. Then he led a procession in prayer all the way to St. Paul's Chapel, where the original seal of the United States that they agreed upon is painted on the inside, or was painted on the inside, which is the wild turkey, or which is also the falcon, but the wild turkey, which is the blackbird with the emblemized shield on the chest, holding the wreath and the arrows, right? The blackbird. lead them there, and pray. At 9/11, the whole thing goes down, and wouldn't you believe it, the only thing left standing, the church. The same little church that was built by the Moors, that lived in the area, you see what I'm saying, that initially converted, that they were using as a religious shield for their Masonic intention. But due to the original, okay, so this is also the representation of what the so-called Hebrews did with the whole great Exodus, in which none of the temples and none of the altars in Jerusalem could be lit because of the 40 years that they spent, because of the 150 years or the 600 years they spent in captivity. So once they were allowed to go back to Israel, they were going back in a different position. They weren't going back in the original form. They were now coming back, so-called mixed or amalgamated with the customs now of the foreign nation. Therefore, they could not partake in the original trust that was put forth by the kingdom that was put forth and pressed in Solomon, built by Hiram of Tyre, which is Phoenicia, which is Carthage, see what I'm saying, which is Canaan, which is Moabite, which is Amalekan, which is Moroccan, which is Moor. So based on this, it says in the Bible, again, using the same book that everybody has been using, this so-called devil been using this book on you for the past 250 years and been brutalizing you with it, and for some reason you haven't broken the seal on it and understood what it really is and what it represents. People like C. Freeman L. came and told us exactly what it was. It's the astrological book to understand how to bind the devil. I got the tape. I saw it. I heard the man. But when you do the knowledge to it, really what you're seeing is that what this means is that the judgment of the day, D-A-Y and D-E-Y, the judgment of the day will return to where the temple was consecrated. This is why the prophecy of the world ending in Jerusalem is starting with the peace in Jerusalem is not the end. That's just the beginning of the end. The end is supposed to come in Megiddo because that's where the original Temple of Solomon is. That's the one that they got everybody guarding, and they're trying to get into Syria to actually lock it down. The physical version that was actually built. Read the prophecy. And this is what these people follow in order to pass on their obligation that was given to them by Salah ad-Din during the 750 years of intermittent conflict in what they call the place of Asia Minor, which was between Salah ad-Din and Godfrey de Bouillon, the Dey Bouillon, and his soulmate or Franciscan brother in arms, the Hugh de Payon, Hugh of the Pagans, because he had so many white slaves and was trying to bring them up. He was like abusing them, but was then giving them so-called Christianity and using them as cannon fodder, and the ones that survived he allowed to marry into his family in order to change the bloodline from the traditional Moors that had already been ruling all the way from the tip of the Pyrenees all the way down into, like I said, northern Africa, and then over through the Barbary states over into Egypt, or what was then Egypt. So therefore, when Washington did this, he was symbolically Solomon, you understand? And the temple that was built was the original foundation of the so-called premise or intent of the true United States, federal republic that was federally that was set up to guard the republic. But it was Lincoln that came with the exacerbated powers. And when you watch the movie, he says it, or the character that they're playing as Lincoln alludes to it and says it, where he says, I don't know what the special powers in the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution gives me the right to do. So I have to look within myself to see what is the best option. So I'm saying this. So if I acknowledge that the slaves are property, then these rebels then are not their own state. They're just citizens, of which then me, their president, is trying to take money from, because the Negro has been put in, or species, to represent property. I can get into the quote God sent me on that later. But if I look at them as rebellious states, then what I am doing is nationalizing their property and using it almost like contraband against them to then force their property to be their overlord, to change the complexion of the South, in which now they would be niggerized by the same caste system that they were now enforcing on the people that was now dark. But remember, the original Civil War amongst the Cherokee based on slavery, which was the dominant war that really started all the way back from 1666, but we'll start with that. That was really about slavery too, and that was in 1854. Albert Pike was just a general under John Drew's regiment in this war. Basically, he was John Drew's slave. John Drew being a Cahokia Indian, or Cahokia Moor, who married a full-blooded Washita or original Moor, and then Cherokee, and had allegedly Noble Jew Ali. But in the process of this, the Scottish Rite thing, the Satan thing, the Lucifer thing, is now put forth as the shield that is now binding all of these white, quote-unquote, boys together. So they're going to use the esoteric thing now as a means to emulate what we are, based upon the fact that's what their forefathers did within this so-called new government of the so-called United States, which was really a steward government for the American Republic that was a manifestation of the Almaricanos Estados, the Moors of Almaricanos, or America. So when you look at how these things manifest in time, and now how it is now, you look at the time frame of which this guy that they are now looking as the new Solomon, the new Akhenaten, right? The new Christ, the new Antichrist, the new Washington, the new Kennedy, the new Lincoln, all of this in one. So if he took office on January 20th, 2009, it's going to be like a 1,290 some odd days, something like that, right? Now, there's another interesting thing is that now that all of these new aspects of the deeper aspects of the Bible is coming out, and these comparisons of what they want the beast to be to get people to be transfixed on now that the end of the world didn't happen like they wanted, it now becomes this other thing. So now that the United States has formally, not returned to God in that sense, everything that's been happening since, let's say, 9/11 is a direct response that they believe is being enacted by them on us to force a genetic reaction to get the one, I say, great nigga, as they say, to destroy the whole thing, like in the Matrix or, again, in Django, special nigga, right? The black dynamite, the one that just is really not with it, and they got to, knowledge. So when we talk about Israel becoming a nation, you see what I'm saying? That happened in 1947. Now, when you read the Bible, it says that that God didn't want them to become a nation, a direct nation anymore like that. Because once they became a nation, they became corrupted. But this doesn't represent the original nation. This represents the nation of Israel, meaning those people who descended from those 13 or 12 tribes that were initially down or descended from the people that was down with this ongoing experiment to distance out and create the different races that would be on the planet. So this happens in 1947. In 1947, this dude is born. You see what I'm saying? So 62 years after 1947, he becomes president, which is Build and Destroy, which is Saturn, which was his number, which was 8, which was also the specific number that was used by the or the Moors of the Elamite, or what they call Chaldean dynasty, who dealt in Zoroastrianism, where we get the real modern version of ceremonial magic from. These ancient Moors, who, again, were ancient Canaanites who went over and eventually became Moabite, spawned what became Sumer and then Babylon and then Babylonia and everything else, based upon their alchemy in consulting the different intelligencers, which represents the different spirits that were put forth in the cuneiform that they created. This is what the white man refers to this day as what they perfected, what was called barbarous evocation. This is what spawned the Kabbalah. This is at the center of the Abbasid Caliphate in what was then Havilah, or what was then ancient Arabia, where the so-called secret caliph existed. This was the empire that spawned the Al-Mahdi, who was able to unify all of Africa and push the British and the brutish Moors out for a time. So this culminates in the biblical prophecy that these people have transfixed themselves to, because they want to somehow be the oppressor and the chosen people at the same time, based upon them knowing the intelligences that were brought forth and promised human hosts by the continuers of the experiment, that were now called wizards and sorcerers and soothsayers, things like that, record label owners, police chiefs, these types of people. So this ancient science that came from the Chaldean Zoroastrian oracles, that again is a Moorish or ancient Canaanite science, that is where all ceremonial magic that you see the Pope and them doing today come from. This is the culmination of them trying to access both sides of the wheel, trying to use Christ as a Christ or Islam or Buddhism or New Ageism or Scientology as a shield for this satanic, Luciferian, esoterical masonry garbage that is then really availed to keep you from going into the real science of who and what you are, whether or not you're a human or an Asiatic, because then you can make a choice into what destiny you want to live and be. Yet the time frame, like I said, is always bust down in these sevens with these 7 years. So you had 7% of the market dropping after 9/11. You had $7 billion deficit at the time. You had 7 major banks that were really caught up in that, Morgan Stanley being one of them, and then 7 years later, they went into the next crisis, financial collapse. You've been having 9/11s ever since 9/11. Because, again, the quantum sphere has been punctured based upon their fooling around with it and us not preparing it. So there's a passage in the Bible or in the book of Daniel, and it talks about the period of the Shemta, right, which is the period really of debt forgiveness. Because after the fall of Israel, the fall of the empire, everybody's debts was off. Whatever debt you owed then was done. But a lot of Moors and a lot of spirits that lost their lives and all of that used the debts and the willing as an anchor to keep themselves here, and then ancestrally move into different bodies and then force you in this life then to somehow pay homage or be up under them. And this is all based upon them not fulfilling their original purpose. So during the Shemta period, you're supposed to give everybody debt. You're supposed to not do that. And the thing is, the Jews do that with each other. That's where the gift giving comes in. They do that for each other, but they don't do that for you. See, they understand the idea of currency. They buy each other lavish gifts and all of that to keep people enthralled but that's also to keep their ledger clear, because then that's almost like a favor that they get later. You see? That's why in their religion, the way that they freak it, they able to ask forgiveness for the lies they're going to tell the year in advance. Understand? They ask forgiveness for that, so that way when they lie to you during that year, they don't feel bad because they don't already made it cool with their God. So what that means is once you get somebody to adopt their God, you see, you own them, especially if their God look like them. See, nobody's God is blue. I mean, nobody in the physical world is born blue yet. You know what I'm saying? So you can't really have a whole cult around people who paint themselves blue like that. You have indigenous, or what they call indigenous or native people who do that, but that's because they live in a jungle way of life. And that's also a manifestation of where their evolution is at the time. You look at it on a spectrum basis. But those people who live in what we perceive as a society, we have to understand that then we are bound by those people who, if they are followed by or following a certain prophecy, they're going to wrap you up in that. So, you know, there's three things you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to break the covenant. The Antichrist really is supposed to break the covenant with God. He's supposed to transgress the laws of God with an idol of terror, right? And then that idol of terror is supposed to be highly put in what they call the highly venerated fortress. They used to do these rituals and then put these relics in the tomb, or what they call the sepulcher. But now that they are on some open steeds, they're now bound by the laws of openness. You see? That's why the Vatican play both sides. They're the open, friendly secret society. You see? Whereas most so-called secret societies or Masons, they don't know what they're a part of, and they don't really care. You see what I'm saying? So, again, they have no honor, because you're putting your name to something and your oath to something that you don't really understand, that you just become another cog in, that if they need a sacrifice one day, they could just go to the local lodge and look at the rolls and see who they want. Check your lineage and say, okay, we're going to use him. But see, if I say this sounds crazy, but if Valerie Jones say this, there's millions of white people that go investigate this and prove that it's true. Black folks just look at it like it's, you know, that's what they're doing. They don't put it together. What I'm showing you is how to I'm really putting you on a game. This is the inner workings of the game. This is the mechanics of the game. The difference between a mechanic and an assassin is that an assassin is just there to kill you. A mechanic is there to kill you and make it look like something else happened. See? Then a cleaner is somebody to come there and clean up after what the mechanic may have left behind and don't realize. You see? Or maybe the cleaner comes to clean the mechanic. See? Either way, that's how it works. So based on these systems that were put into unilateral effect ancestrally by our people, we are still bound by them in aspects by proxy based upon the people who anchor us still to them, which are the people who are following those laws, which are these so-called Khazarian or Ashkenazi or Anunnaki Jews. And so when you look at the character, when you look at when the Shemtas go down, the last Shemta was in 2008. That's when the whole scandal, when this nigga came in, but that's when the whole stimulus and all that shit went down. All the banks got it. So the next Shemta is going to come in 2015. So this represents the punishment now of the Creator on the people who have denied God based upon the consecration oath that was given by George Washington at the Consecration Foundation Hall at the very epicenter of the consecrated ground, i.e. the Temple of Solomon that was built at the foundation of the so-called United States, which was the new nation of Israel. So again, from 2009 to 2016, these are the final 7 years in which they have everything like kind of done. From 2009 to 2015, that's the time frame in which the covenant, like I said, he makes. But these covenants, he's already done. So he's already solidified himself as the so-called Antichrist to these people if you look at the sign. So, like I said, one of the signs was he was supposed to make the covenant and then transgress against it. So when he said, he took that oath of office 3 times. You see what I'm saying? That was him going over, taking the oath, and then transgressing against it. The first oath was real. The second oath was the second degree. The third oath was the third degree. So isn't it funny that he takes these 3 oaths, unlike any other president in the world, left-handed, and nobody does the knowledge to none. So that's good. But when we do the knowledge to that, that's what they are using to represent him as that, based upon their participation of the so-called ritual that they have all agreed to be a part of in order for them to rule everything. You see? So they're bound by a system. This is what Washington said when he said, on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right, which heaven itself has ordained. We ordain these people to be what they are in the time period that they were. And so this became the evidence for us to allow our nation to heal itself and not participate in these foreign wars. But these foreign wars became so all-consuming that it reduced our capacity to sustain ourselves as an independent nation apart from them. And as we were declared through this 13th Amendment now, that was really a way that they were using to create a way to bring the original man back into his position of ruling. That's why when you look at the movie Lincoln, there's a scene where these black people, all of a sudden, they ain't never had no black people in nothing. On the day they want to pass the 13th Amendment, 13 being the original black sign symbol of the 13 original tribes of Shabazz that were using the 13, that became the 13 zodiacs of the 13 tribes of Israel, 12 tribes of Israel that became the original stock of the Yakubian experiment. They come in and they sit above the white man in the rafters looking down on the white man, and they said, "Welcome to your house." And they sat there like they was royalty, and they went on with the debate below them. This, again, is a symbol to let you know that this white man know that you had a government that he was able to totally bury. When you watch Django, they're going to use terms on you that you don't know mean more. Terms like, that nigga got sand. A sand nigga is a black Arab or more back in the days. Because when the white man went over there, he saw them and was like, damn, this niggas in the sand, this niggas over here, this niggas everywhere. Right? There's also a term they call it, they use the term One-Eyed Charlie. One-Eyed Charlie is a Barbary pirate or a descendant from the Barbary pirates that was living as free men under Moorish jurisdiction during the whole Civil War, or the time leading up to the Civil War, on those so-called plantations that were set aside from the rest of society, that specifically African POWs that did not speak English, that had no knowledge of how things worked over here, were brought and just dumped there. And then you had black niggas that was from here, that was raised on that plantation, where the white man was now put above them to act as king, the puppet king. While the house nigga was there breaking these niggas down psychologically, turning them into this so-called Negro that they were going to use, again, to fulfill themselves in society. So all of this money that was annexed to the North after the destruction of the South came through the 13th Amendment. So all of the cash and all of the Confederate banks, all of these banks got absorbed into what became the money that funded the entire Industrial Revolution. Therefore, they had already been preparing these people, being that they bleached us out, and then they all agreed to fulfill this obligation of always keeping us down. And so when this dude took the oath of office, he was taking an oath against his original people, because remember, if you believe his father was African, and that means he's an African-American. If you believe his father is Frank Marshall, then that means that you believe that he was born a Moor, because Frank Marshall was born here. But because he don't call Frank his father in it, you don't put it together. You don't really see pictures of them together unless you put them together. That's because, again, they flipping it on you. But remember, this dude was a red agent. He was a commie. You know what I mean? He was a double agent for the KGB. This don't mean he ain't had knowledge of self. You see what I'm saying? This don't mean he was a Freemason and nothing else. It just means that he was doing what he was doing for him. Because they would send spies, people would send spies over here and try to infiltrate our organizations, and when the organization get infiltrated, the core people within it would be like, all right, we just going to do shit word of mouth. And that became the thing. Whereas everybody in the temple just stayed in the past. Everybody in the church stayed in the past. Everybody who went to the church every Sunday, that is the anchor that keeps them locked down into a third density. The religion, period. This don't mean that you shouldn't be spiritual or you shouldn't believe in God. God has nothing to do with religion. And people know that. So if you know God is not a religion, what are you doing? You are transgressing against your oath of office. Remember, this dude represents you. So what he's doing, this is what the ancestors or whatever is looking at it, that's what everybody's doing. Remember, we are seen as examples of each other because the same spirit of the eternal creator exists in us. That's why we could go anywhere and claim it as original Al-Moroccans or Al-Monarchans or whatever. So that's the first thing he did. He break the oath of office, right? Then the second thing this dude do to show and prove he's the Antichrist, right? They take the idol of terror, right? The idol of terror was the thing they got on August 2nd when they lifted into place the beam from the World Trade Center from 9/11, in which he wrote on it, "We rebuild, we remember, we rebuild, we come back stronger." What the hell does that mean? What I see is 3 W's, 3 E's, 2 R's, 1 C. You know what I'm saying? So boom, they take that, and then it says what? You have to take the idol and exalt it in the high fortress. They put it in the White House. Isn't that the high fortress of America? So when the prophet, whose birthday is tomorrow, for those people who don't remember, came and told everybody, yo, you can't really rock with everybody like that. You got to just kind of do you to the point where you cool with everybody and help lift them up. But remember, you still have the sword of Osman Bey to uphold, which is the sword of Ma'at, which was passed down from the great king. Like I said, the last emperor we had was Montezuma, and before him, after him, it was Noble Ali. People would say what they want, but when you really do the knowledge, you see that this is why it was the World Organization and the American or America's organization, in which the United States government puppeted that and set themselves up the same way. The American influence, which was the culture, right? And then the United States influence, which was the military. That's what they have inflicted on everybody. But when you live in America domestically, there is a difference between an American and a citizen of the United States. Caucasian people, or people who perceive themselves as white, perceive themselves as citizens, as Americans. So by the definition of what their forefathers set out for them, but they just put out this puppet hoax thing that the Blacksville Dictionary, that the family wrote the Blacksville Dictionary, was fake. Let's look at the premise of that. Who does that specifically affect? People who deal with law. Don't that affect everybody? But why was this specifically put on sites that were marketed or started by original so-called black people? Go back and look at the IP address where that original post comes from and who these people are literally saying they are. You remember, I told you months ago, they came out and took the United States to court for the right to be able to post false news stories that would affect you negatively in whatever plans you had legally, right, or materially in pursuant of nationality, birthright, or inheritance. So, of course, they're going to come out and say it's fake because they know niggas been using it to just beat them up in court for all of these years. But let's say, take the position, okay, it was fake. It was a hoax. So that means every one of their lawyers, every one of their judges that cited it in a case, all those cases have to be stricken. All those cases have to be brought down. All of those judges have to be removed. All of that has to be done. You see, this is why you have the debt forgiveness, or why the debt forgiveness was programmed into our cycle. This is what we refer to as the procession of equinoxes and the coming of the 25,000 years. That was the debt reset. That's why they couldn't reach an agreement at the close of it. So they went into it still in debt. You see what they did? Because the very foundation of their nation was cracked. And they cracked it by using an anti-God to help them destabilize and denationalize, continually denationalize the original people who were supposed to come back into being to help the world and uplift fallen humanity. The original Asiatic black man. That is archetyped in all of these movies that's now coming out with your history in it. Cartoons about Yaqub and all this other stuff. Like what they wouldn't have done that in the 80s. In the 80s they were saying all that was fake. In the 80s they were saying that black people was descended from the Neanderthal. Now there's reports that they're saying anybody that is not melanated is descended from a Neanderthal. So I told you to look up Xana, the Russian chick. So they have pegged this dude to be the Antichrist. They're going to try to use this as a means to spring the new so-called aspect of control in, and none of it is going to uphold because everything, what they said everything that they have initiated has now faltered. They now came out with the Zero Dark 30 thing to give you the new illusion of how they killed Bin Laden and all of that, and then people eating that up. But really, that movie was really to traumatize you. Like the first 5 minutes of Private Ryan was to prepare everybody for the Gulf War, right? To show everybody what the Gulf War they was trying to do, or trying to market these people. The first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of this movie was about showing you how they render people, put them in rendition camps and torture them and all of that. So remember, they so-called foreign fathers was totally against all of that, or they was against that when they wasn't the ones doing it. Either way, you got to remember that they use a basic system of 6 based upon the original Chaldeans, again, whose system was sexagesimal, meaning that it was based on a 60 rotation number. So the Babylon workings and things that they had learned were all of the things that they did. So when the original Moors of Canaan were put out of their land, meaning what David McRitchie told the times when the ancient landowners and the ancient dukes and emperors of America would cease to be recognized as that, this was a time when it was a universal thing where they were using where Moriscos and Franciscan Moors and Holy Roman Emperor Moors, as well as barbarous like dark-skinned Moors, self-hatred ones, started to produce this pseudo-caste of white that grafted onto different aspects of the empire, and then eventually started to be used as a means of color once they started to use puppet strings, meaning Caucasian males as dominant puppets for them to orchestrate their mischief and stuff through. This is who Aaron was in Titus Andronicus. You know what I'm saying? This is the adjutant Moor who's bent on destroying Rome. You see what I'm saying? Descended from the ancient Carthaginian stock, basically representing the old empire. You know what I'm saying? So in that, these are the people that we essentially have both within us, both sides of this. You see? So this is why we have to make the distinction, or why the prophet came and made a certain distinction and put everything that needed to be put in place in us by using aspects of their language in such a way that it mirrored everything that they were trying to say was there. Nobody else did this. You see what I'm saying? And so in it, it made way for us to come back in. This was the fulfillment of what Lincoln was trying to do with the 13th Amendment, essentially creating a system in which the so-called Negro could be, who was seen as a species or species of property, could be brought into a 13th 11th Amendment citizenship that would allow them eventual integration and amalgamation into so-called black society. I know this dude. I used to work for him at the store. You know what I'm saying? They knew specifically and have known specifically that the aspect of denationalization was more of an agreement that was inherited to them, and that became a fixture or an obsession of color based upon the need to pit us against each other, based upon a xenophobic inferiority complex that was really based on a sexual maladaptation that came from, again, the Neanderthal breeding. The black people who were or had traces of them in Russia, of the Neanderthal in them, were those black people who were brought up there during the so-called slavery pogroms of the Bolsheviks, because there used to be a heavy Ethiopian population in Russia, based upon the diplomatic relationship between the Tsar and the emperors, which, again, the United States did not like. But, again, the Tsar was just a bleached-out Moor. You see what I'm saying? A great quote says, fortunately, we are not without judicial construction of this clause of the Constitution. First, leading case is subject, right? Then it basically says we have no jurisdiction over them. It says that what are the privileges and immunity of the citizens of the several states? The definitions of prisoners and immunities of the seven states is adopted by this in court in the recent case, which was the slaughterhouse cases, which brought down 3 different types of citizens, 3 different types of United States so-called citizens. You understand? Not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, but 3 main branches or 3 main parts, right? The Algonquin, the indigenous, and the native. The so-called Caucasian man today is claiming a native white jurisdiction, you see? And then he has everybody else under him claiming a pseudo-mestizo white position, right? Which is why you see these black people butchering themselves and everything else. Another thing comes from a quote from a general named General Frank Scott Wilson that says, we have no right over the Indians, whether within or without real or pretended limits of any colony. They will not allow themselves to be classed according to the bounds of colonies, you see? So the notice in Williams' speech basically saying that he knows that they have no jurisdiction and they can't do that. If we agreed that we were Indians, then we would fall under them, which means we would have to adopt a god and so forth and so on. But we never called ourselves that. That's what they called us and called us amongst each other. So this becomes the name that they call. But they distinct American Indian from Native American. An American Indian is a nigger, is a Django, whereas a Native American is a Russell Means. You see what I'm saying? The Native American came later. The American Indian was always here, but he was put out of his land and turned a slave into his own land. And then they created these things called Moors Indian schools, where they created this and taught this in mass to children, which again was adopted by the same system that they did in Germany. Forcibly taken. This was done throughout the thing. After November 4th, 1889, it was a mass thing where all of these white people all over the world just started going crazy on the black people around them, rioting, killing them, running in, taking their children. Look what happened in Australia with the Aborigines. First thing happened, one day me and the Queen going to a restaurant, and there's a lady, and the first thing she said, Australian lady, she's like, oh, I want to just take your baby. I was like, wow, but then, she's foreign, she don't really know, so I don't take it as offense, but I hear what she said, you see? So I answer what she said. So I say, yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I would never leave him with you now. And even if I did know you, I would have to be there. So from there, she already knew. The whole vibe of her switch, it became like, oh, because there was some slaves around her that was just sitting there like fawning or trying to, act big willy or whatever, but really It wasn't like that. You could have said what's up when we did, but niggas do whatever. So when she turned off to them and start talking to us, it's because we represent what we are. I'm not the state of, I'm the state. You see? So the fact that there are 3 citizens with 2 sets of privileges and immunities under the Constitution of the United States of America is within what they call the slaughterhouse cases. That's why it's so ingenious that slaughterhouse, you see what I'm saying? It's 4 different aspects because really it's representing the 3 and the silent 4th citizen within the so-called United States. And they happen to be the best lyricists, you see? And again, one of them is from where? New Jersey. Where was the first Canaanite temple? Where was the Canaanite temple founded? In Jersey. See what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying? So this is all basically, you know what I mean, prophecy that's already been fulfilled that we are just kind of like letting go down without really basking in the aspect that it's really us, that this whole thing was really about allowing God to be manifested in the least most possible place that people would go to look for it. And those that knew the original people and who and what they represented and were and are that are supposed to help. That's another good thing about that movie. There's a descendant, a German, Bavarian, representative of the Holy Roman Empire, again, the same so-called white people that was allegedly, that would eventually become the Germans, but initially was originally the great dukes and kings and queens and earls and all of that of old Europe. He's the one who literally, to the letter of the law, executed his position. And as a master mason amongst the so-called Scottish Rite, was there to bound to help the Moor and put the Moor back in position of lordship, which is why the Moor went through 3 different aspects of clothing. When he started, he came at and he was able to get his own clothes. They say, yo, I could wear this? He said, yeah. So he went and dressed as a Moor in the page position, meaning a blue lodge position, because he had the knickers up to the thing. Then, after he killed and whipped the white man, he basically presented himself worthy to now move to the higher position, in which now he wears the green. Told you the original green is the color of Islam, right? Then, at the time that he destroyed Candyland, which represents the United States, which represents, you know what I'm saying, the tyranny that they have brought on the world in the name of the American people, he's wearing the maroon, the violet. And he's riding off into the sunset with the queen. Yet it's a slippery slope. Do you want your child playing with Django toys where he's calling where the little white boys is calling a little black Django nigger and things like that? You see? It's very, very fine. Then when you see things like Kerry Hilson might be going out with Quentin Tarantino, seeing that what is on film is there to represent an archetype and is almost put out as a gift in some ways, or a jewel in the rough. Muhammad Ali's daughter said when she came in the crib one time and she had on kind of like a slutty outfit or whatever, he sat her down and said, Queen, the best things in the world you got to really dig to get. You got to really go in and get them. It's like a diamond. You got to really drill to really find that one piece of coal and sculpt it out and really get to the point that you can access that beauty. So if that's the case, why would you want to put the most beautiful thing you are just on the outside like that? She said from that point on, she says, so that means that this the aspect of you that should be covered. Not saying you got to be totally that, but in, public and situations like that, if we're not at the beach or whatever, you got to do your thing. And he's right. So when this dude is saying we rebuild, we remember, we rebuild, we come back stronger, what is this? Is this a thing about us as the United States? No. It's a message to his own people that they have now erected and put themselves in that little cabal position to be this fake thing. So based on the fact that Romney didn't get in, it looks like the so-called Nazis or the dominant Nazi part, they're both Nazis, but the dominant Nazi part has been annexed. The fact that where everybody that was supposed to testify got taken out, shows you that the Soros side of everything is running. Hillary's in the hospital. Bill was in the hospital for a second. What's his name when he was going to testify? James Holmes' father, he was going to testify. They turned his son into a spring killer. The other chick, Lanza, his father was going to testify in the same trial. They turned him into a sleeper killer. You see? So the fact that they're still doing the same wickedness is the problem. And we haven't created a full front to do it. Like you got to take the things that the enemy leaves for you and use it to your advantage. Yet you can't use it to become it, because then you fall to the jurisdiction of your enemy. That's why when things are done in allied situations, it's worked out directly. So whenever they dealing with you, they dealing with a foreign state. Yet they want to claim jurisdiction, but the foreign state was a state that they were subordinate to. And that's why they don't want to accept the jurisdiction, because then if they do it, everybody got to do it. So the fact that people want to say, oh, Jay Electronica is, he going back into the Rothschild family and flipping it and all that, that's everybody's entitled to an opinion. And when you make yourself a public figure, this is what happens, myself included, But at the same token, based on your actions and how you move, you don't do certain things. You don't put something of value on something of no value. You don't put a fez on a pig. You don't take a fez and throw it into the crowd. That alone was enough for me. And I know the brother. He's a good brother. He's peace. But when it comes to certain, you know what I'm saying, he has already shown by his own deeds and actions that he's following in the actions of those who have put us in the trick bag in the first place. That don't mean that he's a bad person. Just like anybody that joins up with the beast. What it does mean that they are a tentacle of the beast. And they should be okay if you only deal with them with a long spoon, and vice versa, because they may not want to tell on you. Unless these niggas is in there on some, spook who set by the door shit, which most niggas ain't. Most people believe that they're citizens of the United States. They believe that that's real. They believe that Obama is their God, their emperor, their Christ. They worship him. But he is doesn't even, if you notice, I rarely even say his name. He's not something real. That is something that is manifested for the people to believe in. And they should do that because that's a nation. You see what I'm saying? When you understand foreign diplomacy, real foreign diplomacy, you understand that everybody has the right to live how they want to live. If this aspect of the Roman Empire wants to enforce this on their people, and their people agree to that, that's the involuntary servitude that was put out in the 13th Amendment. So that means that they ain't saying okay. They volunteering for it. So they look at crimes as volunteering into service. But this service, again, it's a time served for you in jail unless you bonded out. The bond comes from the superior party, the grantor, the person with the trust. Who's that? That's Noble Ali. They don't have jurisdiction over him. He's got jurisdiction over them. That's why Woodrow Wilson gave the flag back to him. He didn't give it to Selassie. He didn't give it to Elijah. He didn't give it to nobody else. He gave it to him. So now the new story is it didn't happen. You see what I'm saying? This is how the whole thing gets switched up. The new story is the Black Soul Dictionary ain't real. The white man came out and said that. The white man come out and said all of this, that shit. That's the point. The point is he will do whatever to rule, including kill his own. Are you ready to do that? There's another scene in the movie where he talks about the stimulated aspect of the submissive part of the brain. This is the part of the brain where when you touch somebody's head and caress they chest, they face around the jawline and then back to the base of the skull. That area is a submissive area, so when you do that instinctively, that's to enable the body to calm down and feel at rest. They're saying that this is the most overly developed in the only person that has a heightened aspect of that is the black man, meaning that in the twisted white man version, this means that he's born to serve. Because the part of him that is passive or submissive is very large. So if that's the case, how this nigga was able to enslave and create a whole race of people? that they have to preserve and give a lie to and do rituals to in secret to keep you from coming up. How that happen? Where they do that at? So all of these people running to get degrees and running to do that, that's cool. You can do that if you want to do that. But you're putting yourself in that jurisdiction. Unless they give you an honorary one in which you give them a consummary declaration of autonomy that says that you're not conferring any, you know what I'm saying, jurisdiction or anything else the same way you would do to any other nation. That's what you're supposed to do. You are a consul. You are in the perpetual state of Morocco, no matter where you're at. If you're in Russia, you're in Morocco. If you're in the United States, you're in Morocco. If you're buried in a hole in Guam, you're Morocco. And that's American. That's America. But all this time I've been trained to hate it. So again, the 13th Amendment, when you look at the fact that Thaddeus Stevens was piping the black chick, this is the same thing that you see today with George Lucas, right? Marrying the black chick. This is the same story because allegedly he's a descendant of him and Tom Hanks and Elvis. In the movie it started, he was sparked to do all this because the black man stepped in front of the black slave and said, no, nigga, it's this. You need to give up the bread. What's going on? I remember the speech. There are 2 black men that represented the Americans, 2 white men that represented the United States. The United States said their part, acted like they just came. He said it. He said, we came into the thing late. He said it. Then the black man, they start saying that the Gettysburg Address. Then the black man, everybody leaving, and the black man stand there and finish the whole shit. Don't say nothing to the nigga, just bounce. Django this shit. And that's what I'm trying to say. They showing you. Thaddeus Stevens now today is Quentin Tarantino, is George Lucas. You see what I'm saying? They all piping black chicks. All these black chicks is open to that. So they willing to be dethroned and dehumanized and turned into white men by white men, but they do not want to be with a black man. This don't mean all of them, but if you getting offended based on what I'm saying, then maybe it's you. Because I'm not talking about nobody in particular. I'm talking about the people who are like that. You see what I'm saying? So you, by your own self, say who and what you are. So based on the offense says that you represent that which would I say is negative. But I'm saying it's negative based upon the fact that it is not producing a nation of strong men. They producing a nation of women. So I'm supposed to what? Be okay with it? That they're using homosexuality as a militarized operation to dehumanize. They humanize my progeny, my people, and I'm supposed to be okay with it based upon equal rights. But equal with what? If they saying that everybody that's not melanated come from a Neanderthal, that means that they saying that they are a different species than you. And you bleaching yourself and killing yourself and cutting yourself up and injecting cement into your ass that rises up into your heart and kill you. And then you get mad at me or somebody like me who say something about it. Black women should be beating these women themselves. Real black women should be the ones, and they are. Black women be texting me all the time, outraged with these hoes. Daily, outraged. And these bitch-ass niggas that's not doing nothing, that's not standing up. But because what niggas ain't out in amongst niggas that just want to sit there and talk? You're not getting work done? No, the work is with the people. The work is with the day-to-day people, helping them with their problems, understanding what the situation is to help them get better by reading it by as best as was taught. That's why the Moors are the ones. And everybody want to say we're not, including Moors. You got Moors trying to push Sunni law on you. When the man showed you in your Quran that you got the emperor of the Saud family, who is Hebrew, Islamic Hebrews, with a descendancy going all the way back to Granada and the kings of the Al-Moroccan Empire over here. That's why his face was in there. So that way, anywhere in the world you go, if niggas say, oh, you ain't this, if you in an Arab country, whatever, like, nah, man, my people was was sanctified by the prophet. The prophet was recognized by your leader. And don't the Saudis have all the money in Asia, in Arabia? Ask a person from Arabia who's the one who's flipping everything and going crazy. They say it's the Saudis. They said the Saudis are crazy. They do what they want. They just be doing whatever. These Americans do anything for them. And this is true because of Noble Jew Ali. But nobody want to accept that as true. They want to get you in a debate and break it down and say that it's not true and you ain't sanctified from the temple and the great grand sheik and come on, man. Come on, man. How is that going to be How is that going to help me be recognized more if I want to go to Barbados and not pay tax on the bill and no shit? You know what I mean? How is that going to go if I go to another country and stuff? How is that going to help me navigate through? If in customs they say, oh, well, we ain't never see this type of American. Oh, well, I'm the new type. I'm the type that's been here that y'all forgot. Get the book Cavaliers and Yankees. There's a whole section where they talk about that the original complexion of the American Republic was totally different. And when the niggas was going over there to Europe, they was amazed at how beautiful and strong and big and black and all that they was. And then after around the mid to 17 to early mid-1800s, they stopped seeing Americans. And then after like around 1845 and all that, they start coming back. They start coming back as white men. This is real. This is their history. This is the history that they ain't telling you. Even when you marry into their family, even when you got kids with them. This Knights of Columbus shit is real. This Opus Day shit is real. This Knights Malta shit is real. This Knights of St. John's of Jerusalem is real. That was all. The Knights of St. John's of Jerusalem go all the way back again to the Crusades, all the way back to the Coptics when they came into the game to help Hugh their pay on. That's why they look at the Ethiopians and want to give them help and all of that every so often, based upon their line, because they get access to the original Christianity through them. That's why certain shit went down with him. They would recognize him as that, but don't want to recognize Noble Joe Ali or Marcus Garvey, make them look out like they was crazy when they both all doing the same thing. Marcus Garvey just had the name, but see, if Noble Joe Ali and Marcus Garvey came out, he'd have appointed Marcus Garvey the war master and all that, then it'd been a problem. They would have come out in full war. And remember, they was already knee-deep in the Crimean War, and the prophet ain't really want to put everybody into that because he was divinely prepared by all the noble sages amongst the time. Get the mysteries of the East, of the secret brotherhood of the East that C. Kirkman Bey put his name on, which was really written by the prophet. That's why there's 3 branches of the Moorish Science Temple. But the prophet made us all Moors within the science. Moors whose science dwells within the temple that is now America or Alamanos. That's what we all are. But we all not living up to that perspective, to the point that's going to let these people start making way of what it's supposed to be. It's not going to happen with niggas with guns running up in there doing that. All the niggas showing you guns and all of that shit on Facebook and all of that shit is all mind games, man. They want you to believe the revolution is everything else but what it really is. Will you stand up and make it? Are you going to choose to be Asiatic or are you going to choose to be human? Well, if you choose to be Asiatic, here's the guide to do it. And here's all the people that helped him do it. Who wrote books on teach you how to live? Who wrote books on the theology of time? Who wrote books on that? Like I said, so what if the Black Slow Dictionary is bullshit? Oh, it's all bullshit. So what? If they using it, and that's what I got to use to be able to keep them from off me and my family, then that's what I'm going to use. Because I've used the language to back these people up. And they'll still send more. They'll still send more. Why? Because they only see me and the queen holding it down, protecting the babies. Who's bringing them? The devil. The black chick that I had the babies for. Does that mean that she's an evil person? She was evil to me. She was evil to my children in terms of putting them in that position, but she was just a representation of what was happening to the rites of passage for all of us as black men in this country that nobody seems to want to help and really see as a scam to not only break the family. No family really get resolved through that. They gave this nigga Stevie J custody of his daughter. Are you crazy? But they know he, I don't want to slander against the brother, but they know that he's in. So whatever they need, they may do. This is the world we're living in, because this is Rome. This is why Carthage and the Moors fought so hard against that, because this represented the society that was tinged by this appetite for destruction that was breeded in based upon this self-hatred that was nurtured genetically throughout the years through this experiment that nobody wants to accept, led to the genetic war that destroyed Atlantis and everything else. That is leading to the same thing now. Only difference is now we're going to be led right over it. Because the belief in faith, the faith in the evidence of those things unseen, and knowing that God is true and real makes it what it is. That's what gives you the knowledge and the deeper insight on how to put it all together, so that way you can speak the language and know. So when the white man tell you that the Canaanites worship Baal, and Baal was the devil, and they was burning kids to that and all of that, and that Moloch was the god they was doing that to, yeah, there was Moors that was doing that. But that wasn't my ancestors doing that. And I know because I'm not doing that now. And the prophet said that you are what your ancestors today. So if you eating people now, your ancestors was eating people before. If you was enslaving and hating on niggas now, you was doing that before. If I'm not doing that now, that means I never did that. If I'm not killing niggas now, that means I was never killing niggas then. Because it's one line through history that I'm going up and down in. But the line is consistent. And it's leading to something that is divine and real, and was put in a language that the prophet was able to match perfectly to the point of laser precision, that when you say certain things, you see the doors unlock in these things and these people, because they're not real. They have no God, and anything that has no God is not real. Anybody that worship a God that don't look like them is a damn slave. Anybody, including the damn Pope, because he don't worship no white Christ. He worshiped the Black Madonna, like all the Russians did. That's why they hate Russia. Don't Russia got a red flag with 5-pointed stars on it and a damn crescent? Don't they hate China for the same thing? Just don't mean I like Russia or China, but they obviously like them enough to let Frank Davis produce a seed that was able to put them in the White House. And they was able to basically defeat the so-called old Nazi guard, right, in the form of the Romney camp, hooked up with the Mormons, right? So now they can jump on behind the Soros thing, which is really based in the whole Zoroastrian thing again, which is the Chaldean thing again. Because they made you believe that you come from the people over there, like they did. And that's not true. Your people was always here. It's just that your people ain't really have to wear no clothes like that. And that's what they don't like. Where you think the bikini came from? Where do you think the Speedo came from? Where you think the loincloth came from? Ain't no jungles in Africa. That Tarzan, all that shit was in South America. All that's here. The dark continent is here. They want you to believe that's Africa, but this is Northwest Africa. Why is that so hard for people to accept? Because to accept it would mean that the prophet was right, and they don't want to give the man that much credit. But he said it would take over 50 years for you to really realize what I brought you. Niggas is just real. You understand? You got niggas that's literally pimping women who's grand sheiks in this thing, man. So again, just because this dirty Moors is doing what they've been doing, don't mean that Moor science is somehow dirty. How does one equate to the other? When I say Moor science, I'm talking about world science. I'm talking about universal science. I'm not talking about some shit that just the prophet made. The prophet perfected and quantified it in a quantum sense that you will be able to literally become the physical emperor yourself. Noble. Nobody can tell me that I'm not what I say that I am. He made the federal government give him that because he was the one with the charter said when they had to get up out of here. That's why they hate Cuba, because he put them in a trust and kept them loyal because of how they held them down. They thought it was Argentina. So after World War II, the Black Sun Society hooked up with the Opus Dei and bring them all to Argentina. Why do you think they was there? That's why Zita said, don't cry for me, Argentina. Don't cry for me. I'm down. Yeah, my man he's in with them. And what did they do? They started an ethnic cleansing, killed everybody, right? And then moved all of the Germans and the white people in and out, all of the people in Argentina speaking German. That don't mean the Argentinians is bad people. Or the people who came later was bad people in terms of them starting the Argentinian state. That's what they're supposed to do. Because enough of us was killed and moved off and sold away where they could do that. But they are the descendants of the people who conquered them. They're not the descendants of us directly. You see what I'm saying? They should know that. And that all these customs that was taught to them the same way we taught it to the white man, where they were supposed to bring it back and teach it to you. Why you think they come to your neighborhood to set up their businesses when they get here? They got to start with you because you the gateway. You the one that was here before everybody, so they need your blessing to make it happen. So when you go to their bodega, give them your money, you are agreeing to their oppression of you. That's how they flipped it, because they've turned the Negro into species property, but then raised him through the 13th Amendment on the path to be able to get his true citizenship again. That's why they shot Lincoln, because he laid the path for what the prophet did later. Nobody wanted to accept that. Or if I'm saying that, I'm somehow stretching the truth or creating history out of nothing. How is that not true? How is that not what he did? Why wasn't the United States? Why wasn't Woodrow Wilson given the charter for the Cuban Convention if he was the man? Why did he have to give the flag back to somebody who was at the time supposedly supposed to be classified as a Negro? No, he was a one-eyed Charlie. You see? He had sand. You see how they do? But if your own people, your own imams and sheiks and these people telling you to dye your beard red and all this other shit, this nigga more lost than you, making you think you on some Dutch camel out there. They have turned the woman insane. That's why you see the prophet holding the woman at the edge of the shore. And on his test of salvation, he's there to raise her up, but she got to get up herself. She got to stand up and say she's not going to be exploited no more. They've taken her natural position and turned her into a monster against her own children. And black women know, man, this is not passion. This is a plea as your son, the widow's son. Get it together, man. Rein these hoes in, man. Make stinks about all these white women adopting your children. I ain't never seen one black woman yet, one black celebrity yet with a white kid. Yet. Please show me if there's one. But that's not the hype. It could be thousands. I never know. Because that's one, not my realm or my, thing, because that's, again, going back to what was set up to distract me from who I am, but that's also an anathema within that bloodline of those black people who have chosen to bring that into their life. But they fooled you to believe that you coming up with them because he's a billionaire. How he's a billionaire? From what? At least Lucas gave us Star Wars. You know what I mean? Reginald Hudlin was in the production of one of the producers of Django too. Ain't nobody calling him racist. Ain't nobody shitting on him. Cat Williams said that Spielberg wrote the script. Or when he got the script, it said it was written by Spielberg. Okay. Whatever it is. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're telling you that this section of the brain was overly developed or submissive in this part of the movie. He takes the hammer. Now the hammer represents the hammer skin. The hammer skins are connected again to these old stool, skull and bones, wolf, scroll and key, wolf's head societies. And then he takes the hammer and bashes that part of the skull and opens it and says that there's 3 dots that's missing here in terms of dots for creativity. But our creativity is not in our submissive aspect. Our creativity comes from our pineal gland. Quentin may not know that. Steven Spielberg, whoever wrote it, may not know that. But what he was trying to prove was that in that, this is why we can lock down these niggas, because these niggas, they should be rising up and killing us, but they not, because we have tricked them and broke them down in such a way where we can overly stimulate this part of their brain and make them think only from here, right? But guess what? The white man aspect of his brain has an overly developed reptilian section of the brain, carnivorous nature. So those original women who have chosen to open themselves up for that sort of inhabitation, that's on them. But that means that they are no longer original. That means that they are no longer what you are, black woman. Therefore, you do not have to feel bad when when you disassociate yourself from those types of women and not consort with them, and only consort or create communities of women that are not having this shit, that are just not having it. That whenever this white man come out and say something crazy, whatever, somebody there to smack his mouth, because he listened to you. He showed you that in the movie. In all of these movies, in all of these pseudo-relationships, these Hollywood relationships that's marketed to you so that way you can shit on the black man that's there for you and hook up with the bad boy so that way you have a reason to go start dating white men, right? It's okay. They got the black man doing the same thing. These niggas think they free. These basketball players, they're killing these niggas left and right. They don't give a damn about these niggas. Because they descend, these big tall ones are the ones that descend from the giants, from Montezuma and them, who was originally the players of the ball game. That's what they're not telling you. You didn't have no big, no 5'7" person playing ball like that on the court back in the days, and that with the Khan and all that. These people were 7 foot plus. These were the giants who was playing the ball game. That's why the damn rim was so high. They want you to believe that average people was just doing that with their hits with an iron ball, throwing it down. Come on, man. Use logic, man. This is what these all-met tour guides is telling people. And niggas is taking people down there to be told this bullshit. Instead of setting up their own shit and doing it themselves. You see what I'm saying? But again, most of the shit that niggas do with this conscious shit is for show. It's not for relevancy or for long-term prosperity to be able to fully initiate something for yourself and your family based upon what's already left for you. They want to deter you and put you into different bags of pseudoisms that have nothing to do with what your ancestry may be here to do. Like I said, by their own mouth, on December 21st, they came out and told you that anybody that's not melanated come from a Neanderthal, which means that what they refer to as a human race. Then they said that the first so-called prototype Neanderthals humans started to come about around 250,000 years ago. After that, before that, there's no relevancy of them. There's no evidence of them, but there's evidence of us. You see? So this is what they're telling you. They're kidnapping your children. They're buying off the officials because of these black boule people in Africa and all that. They geared up to invade Africa to push the Chinese out. See what I'm saying? The Chinese have already fortified themselves with the African. They already got a whole ninja brigade hooked up through the Black Dragon Society and all of that. It's real. Go online, look at Shaolin in Africa. See what they're doing with the children. It's a wrap. The United States has no wins. Remember, the United States did not win the whole Mogadishu thing, the whole Somalian thing. They did not win anything. They haven't really won in a long time. You understand? So the extension of the empire is just based upon more confusion. That's what these movies where you see the one spy going in and messing everything up, that's where all of that comes from. Think about it. When the spy comes in and he's breaking up all of that shit and all of the buildings is blowing up and all that, that's all money that city or that country got to pay for that they may not have. They don't make the movie about that, though. And where did these broke nations go to resolve their issues? The United Nations. What was the United Nations used to set up? To take away energy from? The family of nations, which at the time was put under the term the Moorish Holy Temple Science of the World. Of which prominent American senators were a part of it. And emirs, and kings, and prophets, and all of that. Through what they call the Asiatic Brotherhood, that was symbolized by the two hands shaken on the card. That's why Elijah said that you're the Asiatic black man. The black man from Asia. But they tell you today Asia is Central Europe and beyond. But that's because they moved the date line from Greenwich to Greenwich, England. You know what I mean? But before that, or after that, it went to Denver, Colorado, because the United States took over everything after World War II from Britain. in trust that it will fulfill the obligations to the queen. You see? So again, the 13th Amendment was already clarified through the slaughterhouse cases. So when Dred Scott came and by his own volition made himself a slave to this white man that he was indebted to, and then when the white man wouldn't free him, even in death, he then petitioned to be free. But the white man said, by your own mouth, you declared yourself a slave, thereby have no rules or no obligation that me as a white man or any white man is bound to respect. Meaning he wasn't a one-eyed Charlie. He didn't have no saying. Even though allegedly he was descended from Ben Bay. They said that was his son. Whether he was or wasn't, it doesn't change the fact of what happened. And then after that, that led to something they call the Missouri Compromise. You see? All of this based on nationality. Our nationality. Because remember, we were seen as property. So the land they talk about, that they were talking about land grabs, that was the slavery. And they all agreed, every nigga that you capture, you're going to call a slave. Never call him a Moor or anything else. Don't call him American Indian. Call him a nigger. You see? And that became the name. And then everybody's called that. And then eventually, niggas start doing that because they start to enhance and over-pacify the submissive aspect of the brain based upon their hyper-extension. This is how you know somebody taught them how to do it, how to be like this to us. The hypermobile extension of the reptilian aspect that allowed them to be so vicious, and aspect was amplified due to their cave trauma that was left over in them from the time of maturing in the cave for those 5,000 years or 6,000 years, whatever, going from jelly to whatever they became. Because remember, you create them, put them in the pupas or whatever, and move them into a different place and then leave them there. Leave them behind the walls and see what happens. Then these Moors is put there at the foot. Every so often, a Xana winds up showing up. They bag her, they supposed to kill her immediately. That's the rule of Islam. But some of these niggas didn't do it. Turn them into sex slaves. See what I'm saying? These Neanderthal chicks turn them into sex slaves, then start having babies with them. So now this Neanderthal come out a little darker than the other one, and this Neanderthal seems that have the babies, this baby on Neanderthal seems to walk up a little straighter, but it's a little darker. So the children are considered human, but the mother's not. It's like mating with a dog. You see? This is where the syphilis trait comes in. So you understand that the genetics of the original man is definitely allergic to things like pork. You see what I'm saying? And things like that. So this was then given to these same Negroes that are now being put and brought off the boat, fresh from Africa, not speaking the real languages and all of that, not really knowing how shit work here. Then you forcing them to be niggas too. But this is African slavery. Slavery's still going on. See? That's the traffic of white folks in particular. That's an ancestral practice. That's always been going on. You understand? African slavery was the byproduct that came out of that because too many Africans started fighting based on these slaves being forced into their land by these foreign Moors that's using them as buffers so they ain't got to deal with them. See? Then Negro slavery was the Moors that was being shipped out of here and being redesignated here during the Spanish-American War and all of that. So all of this is in turmoil between 1790 and 1914. Once 1914 to 1928, we get the reestablishment of the empire by what the Prophet did, making all of us trustees of it. But you got to follow the tenets of what that is. And everybody wants to set themselves up as their own prophet. Some even took what they learned as young adepts and set themselves up as kings over men. Great men still, but no integrity. You know? But of that, a lot of white folk who grew up in a system like Father Divine Church, Marlon Brando family, all of these white people came out of that. That was the antithesis. And he studied more science and all of that under the greats too. Just like Sweet Daddy Grace. The only thing Sweet Daddy Grace was more about him. You know what I mean? He still dropped jewels, but but he laid the groundwork, the system, for what became all of the preachers and all of that later. The preacher that you see in Car Wash, Richard Pryor was playing, that's Sweet Daddy Grace. If you look at Leonardo DiCaprio's character, especially how they was talking after the two niggas, the Mandingas, was killing each other, was talking about it. No, the scene where they were talking with it, when a nigga ran in the tree. You would see how much the pimping thing came out of the slave master thing. You see how the whole thing come out of what and why that is so revered in American culture, no matter who's the pimp. But the pimp being the intersection between the Moor and Mason, the slave owner, the one-eyed Charlie, and the slave. You see? That's what Southern gentlemen were. That's why after the imposition of the 13th Amendment, the original 13th Amendment, that laid the passageway for us to be able to do everything else we wanted to do and go back home. Literally. That's why so many white men was against it. That's what laid it open for women to vote and everybody else. But now so many black men have chosen to be homosexual. They have chosen to be women. Therefore, they have put themselves outside of their own national or natural sense, gender. Therefore, they are susceptible to the laws of whatever the womanly gender comes about. You see, just as those women who choose to live as men. This does not, again, mean that they're horrible people, yet they, for whatever reason, in their line have been exposed to aspects, deeper aspects of ritual within the program to help bring about that disharmony. That's just based upon everything else. You take it how they want. But in the end, you are what your forefathers were before you. If your mother was a woman and she had a woman and you live like a man, you're a woman living like a man, regardless of what you do to yourself and how you live. It is what it is. That is the Zodiac Constitution. That is the divine bylaw that was given to us to be able to uphold. That's why they want so many of you brothers to go down that road, so that way you would never feel like a man again. That's why they want so many black women to now find white men so attractive that they are willing to humiliate themselves and mutilate their bodies and mutilate their minds to be something else just to spite themselves, their man, their children, to the point they're giving them up. You heard the story. Ain't nobody forced that black woman to give her baby up to these white people and not even tell the black man that she had the baby. Beautiful woman, beautiful baby. These white folks were going to keep it. She didn't even care. You understand? Look at that movie, Precious. That shit is real. This is a thing that's brought in. Antoine Fisher. These movies in which these women are terrorizing. We always see the male pedophile, but nobody talks about the female ones. It's real, and it's something that, again, the woman has to stand up and get, because a set puts us all together, man. One come out the other. So, all of that being said, we want to definitely give thanks and praise to all of the people who have been doing the knowledge and been supporting what we've been doing and striving to go with it. So, anybody wants to continue to do that, you could always email us at houseofel@hotmail.com for our Wednesday night class session that delve into more specific and deeper aspects of what it is we're talking about and how to better qualify that based upon what else is going on out there. You can email us at houseofel@hotmail.com. Also tune in Super Heru Radio every Monday night from 9 to Also check out my novel, The Dark Skull for 18. Go to www.darkscope418.com. Check it out. You can order it in EPUB, ebook, or hardcover. It's a great read, and it's very poignant with what's going on and what's been happening so far, and put in a context that you can kind of open up dialogue and discussion with the children specifically. You can also check out www.cookingmorewithless.com, as well as www.blackmambaworkouts.com. Like I said, this time is the time when we should be focusing in on what we need to get straight, because, like I said, this dude has already transgressed against the nation in these moves that were made. So, in that, he is now obligated to fulfill prophecy for them based upon his being brought through peerage to do that. So, the destiny of the United States, that is, again, the foundation has already been cracked by their satanic action, means that those who put themselves under the true theocratic autonomy shall be the ones to inherit the kingdom. That's just what it is. So, again, holla at me, houseofel@hotmail.com. Check out Daniel 9:24-27. Very interesting. Also, get the Moorish Circle 7 Quran if you don't have it. That's evidence of your one of the steps it takes to get to where you want to go. So definitely get familiar with that. And again, this is not about any particular temple or anything like that. I'm talking about real, direct, Al-Moroccan knowledge that is not filtered, per se, in the traditional fashion with the traditional blinds to keep you constantly going back to court and all of that. It's not about that anymore. It's about raising up the vibration of what it really needs to be. But that is not necessarily something for Facebook, YouTube, MySpace, or anything else. So that's why we got to be adults about it and really do the work. Go back to doing shit like writing letters, using seals. These are real things. So in that, holler at me, houseofel@hotmail.com. If you want to leave a donation through PayPal, you can go to dukeoftears@gmail.com. That's DUKEOFTIERS@gmail.com. At PayPal, you can leave a donation there. They're all appreciated, you know. The more that's there, the more we can do in research and bring to you. So thank you for that help, and thank my queen, committed 10,000 years, for always being there and holding me down and holding me up, you know, as well as my children, the ones estranged and the one that's here, and yours, and all the new children born, and all of the real Moroccan Moors that's really rocking out, you know what I'm saying? Not the copyists, not the people who see Moors do cooking and then all of a sudden want to do cooking. Like, it's like, do what's best for you. Stop fighting. That fighting shit is a form of denationalization. Look at copying as a form of denationalization. Start to look at it, like I said, like the Noble Moor told me. Anybody that's not dealing with nationality, birthright, or inheritance is your sworn enemy. Don't believe me? Look at Lincoln. Look at it in order, son. For real. So with that, peace. Don't hate on Django. Look at it for the message of what it really is or what's really going on in it, and look past the fact that everybody in it is a slave. That's part of the ritual. Look at it, the archetypes, and how it moves you and what it compels you to do. It's screaming, nationalize, nigga. Peace.